Alrighty, folks, welcome to our free pick video here today for Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. Happy Wednesday to you. Happy hump day to you. Weekend's right around the corner. We are halfway there. Of course, my name is Brock Page. I've been dishing out free sports picks right here on YouTube since 2016. And if you want to see which one of these free plays on this video that I actually like the best, you may want to think about signing up for my $1.99 daily best play on my premium site. It gives you one premium selection of mine every single day for the next 30 days. The math works out to be just 6 cents a day. I currently have over 1,415 members who are signed up and active on my premium site right now. Once again, that's patreon.com/BrockPage. And with that, folks, we're going to dive into some free content. We're going to take a look at the Lakers squaring off against the Wizards. That'll be a 7 o'clock Eastern start time. The Lakers are the 13-point favorite. Total's 233.5. And I'll tell you what, even though the Lakers haven't been great on the road this season, I think they should be able to pour it on here tonight against Washington. The Wizards allow 122 points a night at home, and the Lakers are a top 3 field goal shooting team. LeBron James leads the roster in scoring, and he's actually drilling 41% of his 3 balls. Now, Anthony Davis, he averages 24 points a night, and he makes 55% of his attempts from the field. When it comes to defensive play, the Lakers do a nice job shutting things down late. They're in the top 10 in fourth quarter points allowed. Now, they're also putting very few people to the foul line. The Lakers are second in the NBA in free throws allowed per game. And I'll tell you, that should be no threat from Washington because they're making just 15 free throws a game. They're in the bottom 3 in the NBA in that particular category. Now, when it comes to shooting the long ball, well, nobody's worse than the Wizards. Washington's dead last in offensive three-point percentage. And in the frequent instance the Wizards miss those 3 balls, well, they rarely get the ball back. They're averaging fewer offensive rebounds a game than any other roster except for one. Now, on the defensive side, no different there. Actually, a little bit worse. Washington is dead last in the NBA in defensive boards per game. And it should come as no surprise when you don't rebound. Well, the other team shoots a lot of shots against you. The Wizards allow more field goals a game than any other team in basketball. Now, injury-wise, Holmes, Jones, Shamet, and Bagley are questionable. Kyle Kuzma's been scratched. Meanwhile, for the Lakers on the other side, Reddish and Vincent are day-to-day for them. When it comes to the total, the Lakers went 6-3 to the over in their last 9. They're also 62% to the over in their road trips. And out of the Wizards' last 10 outings themselves, the over cashed in 60% of those games. Give me the Lakers minus 13, over 233.5. All right, next matchup, Blazers, Hornets, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Charlotte's minus 1.5, totals 213. And I'll tell you what, both teams have been horrible in their respective locations. Charlotte's just 10-27 in the Spectrum Center this season. And Portland, on the other side, they've yet to record double-digit victories on the road. But I'll tell you what, in the lesser of two evils, I guess I got to take the team catching 1.5. Portland did cover recently against the likes of Orlando, Denver, and the Clippers. And, not that means a whole lot because this number is so short here today. But you also got to consider the fact that Portland's done a decent job of covering on the road as well. They're 8-4 against the number in their out-of-conference road trips, which means they're covering in nearly 70% of those games. And even though there's not a ton to nitpick about, there's not a ton that Portland does right, they're actually tough guarding the 3 ball. Portland's actually in the top 3 in the NBA in defensive 3-point percentage on the road. And I'll tell you what, the Blazers really tend to tighten things up late in games. They're currently in the top 5 in the NBA in fourth quarter points allowed. And the reason for that, well, it's turnovers. They're actually in the top 10 in the league in steals per game. Meanwhile, on offense, even though, they don't like to get to the line much, they do make the best of it. Portland's in the top 10 in offensive free throw percentage. And they're facing a Charlotte team on the other side who's having all kinds of problems on defense. Charlotte's letting their opponents make just about 50% of their field goals against them. When it comes to grabbing boards, well, they're a bottom 3 defensive rebounding team. And as bad as Charlotte is on defense, they're even worse on offense. They're currently dead last in point production in the Eastern Conference. And in Charlotte's case, they can't rebound on offense, nor can they shoot from the stripe. They're dead last in the entire league in both of those categories I just mentioned. Now, injury-wise, Bridges, Williams, Mychich, and Miller are questionable for Charlotte. Meanwhile, for Portland, Simons is out. Grant and Minaya are doubtful. When it comes to the total, not expecting an offensive clinic in this one. The Blazers are 19-8 to the under against the Eastern Conference. Meanwhile, Charlotte saw unders recently against the likes of the Warriors, Magic, and Sixers. Give me Portland plus 1.5, under 213. Next contest, Pistons, Hawks, 7:30 Eastern start time. Atlanta's minus 11.5, totals 223. And normally I'd shy away from this number, but the Hawks continue to win games without Trae Young. They're 5-1 straight up in their last 6. They covered the point spread in all of those games except for one. DeJounte Murray averages over 22.5 points a game. DeAndre Hunter makes 40% of his three-pointers. And when it comes to rebounding the basketball, the Hawks are doing a nice job of that on the offensive end of the court. They're in the top 5 in the East in offensive boards per game. And they're facing a Pistons team who's just 6-30 on the road this year. And they continuously put people to the foul line. They're actually second to last in free throws allowed per game. And it should come as no surprise, the Pistons are allowing just about 120 points per contest. Now, on offense, there's also not much the Pistons do correctly on that end of the court as well. They're dead last in three-pointers made per game, very little threat shooting that long ball. And out of their last 10 ball games, they took the loss in all of those contests except for one. Now, injury-wise, Cunningham, Gibson, and Sasser are questionable. Grimes and Fontecchio are out. Meanwhile, for Atlanta, Young, Griffin, and Goye still inactive. Okongwu, he's also been scratched. Now, total-wise, the Hawks went 8-2 to the over in their last 10, 65% to the over in their in-conference home games. Meanwhile, Detroit on the other side, they saw overs recently against the likes of Memphis, New York, and Boston. Give me Atlanta minus 11.5, over 223. All right, next contest, Pacers, Nets, 7:30 Eastern start time. Indiana's minus 7.5, totals 230. And as bad as Brooklyn's been, I think this is a tough number for Indy backers here. They're laying a couple of baskets on the road, and they do continue to struggle on defense. Indy's allowing their opponents to make nearly 51% of their field goals against them when they travel. They're also putting more people to the foul line than any other team in the league. They're giving up over 20 made free throws a game. They're actually dead last in that particular category. And in addition to that, the Pacers are kind of burying themselves early in games. They're a bottom 3 point allowing team in the first half. And even though the Nets aren't breaking any scoreboards here lately, they still do a nice job shooting the long ball. Brooklyn's a top 10 three-point making team. Now, when it comes to defensive play, they actually do play some tough D in the Barclays Center. Brooklyn's in the top 3 in the league in first quarter points allowed at home. Meanwhile, late in games, they do tend to lock it up in the final frame as well. They're a top 5 point allowing team in the fourth quarter at home. I feel like with that bigger number here, that back door could potentially be open. Now, injury-wise, Dennis Smith Jr. is battling a hip injury, officially listed as questionable. Meanwhile, for the Pacers, Miles Turner is day-to-day with a finger. When it comes to the total, the Pacers saw overs recently against the likes of the Clippers. I believe it was the Lakers as well, and Brooklyn just a few nights ago. They actually went 7-3 to the over in their last 10 gatherings with the Nets. So if you're into historical trends, well, plenty of overs to go around. Now, Brooklyn saw 5 out of their last 9 get over the line themselves. Give me Brooklyn plus 7.5, over 230. All right, next matchup, Thunder, Celtics, 7:30 Eastern start time. Boston's -9, totals 231. And based on this particular number and the lack of line movement over the past couple of hours, I'm not so sure Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to suit up here today for OKC. He's listed as questionable, but once again, we're not really seeing a whole lot of movement, so I'm not overly optimistic that he's going to suit up here. Now, more recently, OKC did take the loss in 3 out of their last 6, and they've had a tough time, covering recently. They failed to cover in 7 out of their last 10 ball games. They also have a losing record against the point spread in their out-of-conference road games. Now, one of the things OKC may also struggle with here today, it's actually rebounding. They're currently in the bottom 5 of the league in offensive boards. Meanwhile, on the defensive side, they're also in the bottom 5 in the West in defensive boards per game as well. They're actually allowing their competition to make nearly 14 three-pointers a game against them. That particular stat's going to put them in the bottom 10 in that category as well. And unfortunately for them, the Celtics do tend to come out guns blazing with regard to the deep ball. Boston makes more three-pointers a night than any other team in the NBA. Now, White, Holiday, Horford, and Hauser, they're all drilling well over 40% of their three-pointers collectively. And obviously, Jason Tatum, he is the club leader in scoring. But I tell you what, it ain't just offense in Boston this season. These guys are going to contest any shot you take. They lead the Eastern Conference in defensive field goal percentage. They're also in the top 3 in the league in blocks. Now, injury-wise, Brown and Springer are day-to-day. Keep an eye on them. Meanwhile, for OKC, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams are both listed as questionable. Those are the top 2 scorers on this Thunder roster. Now, total-wise, Oklahoma City saw unders recently against the likes of the Sixers, Bucks, and Raptors. Meanwhile, Boston has gone 7-5 to the under in their out-of-conference home games. Give me Boston -9, under 231. Next game, Grizzlies, Bucks, 8 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Milwaukee's -13.5, totals 221. And I'll tell you what, I don't like this big number for Milwaukee here. I get they're, the better team, but they have had issues covering the point spread this year, and this is a big number. They've got a losing record against the point spread in the Fiserv Forum, and they've had all kinds of problems covering against the West. They're currently just 10-18 against the spread in their out-of-conference ball games. Good for just 35% in that category. And I'll tell you, a lot of the trouble Milwaukee gets into is on the defensive end of the court. They're a bottom 10 point-allowing team at home, and they tend to rebound sloppily in front of their own fans. They're a bottom 10 defensive rebounding team in their own building. And the biggest issue for Milwaukee defensively, well, it actually comes late in games. They're giving up more fourth-quarter points than any other roster in the league right now. And even though the Grizzlies aren't known for scoring a lot of points, they do rebound well away from home. They're in the top 10 in offensive boards on the road. When it comes to covering the point spread, Memphis has done a nice job in those road games. They're covering in 64% of their out-of-conference games in their travels. And the reason for that is solid defense late. Memphis allows fewer fourth-quarter points than any other roster in the NBA besides one. When it comes to the injury list, Watanabe, Bane, and Vince Williams, they've been scratched. John Contra has been downgraded to doubtful. Meanwhile, for Milwaukee, Lillard, Pat Bev, and Galloway are all day-to-day. Got to keep an eye on them. 6 out of Milwaukee's last 8 ball games did get over the total. They're also 10-4 to the over against the West at the Fiserv Forum. Memphis, they've seen just about 60% of their road games get over the total themselves. Give me the Grizzlies, plus 13.5, over 221. Next game, Magic Pelicans, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. New Orleans is -3, totals 208. And speaking of the total on this one, we do have 2 very physical defensive teams squaring off here today. I'll start with the Pelicans. They lead the NBA right now in guarding the 3 ball. Meanwhile, Orlando's the best defensive rebounding team in the game right now. And more recently, the Magic saw unders in their last 5 straight, 8-1 to the under in their last 9. Meanwhile, the Pels on the other side, they are 64% to the under in their out-of-conference home games. And when it comes to selecting a winner in this one, this game is being featured as my $1.99 daily best play. So if you want to see whether I like the Pels laying a bucket at home or if I like Orlando catching the 3 on the road, this game once again is being featured as my daily best play on my premium site. It costs just 6 cents a day for 30 days of service. But as far as making a free play is concerned, give me the under 208. Next matchup, Raptors, T-Wolves, 8 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Minnesota's minus 16, totals 215.5. And as dominant as Minnesota's been, this is an extremely tall number for them. They failed to cover in 3 out of their last 4 games, and they do have a losing record against the point spread in their own arena. And for some reason, the T-Wolves struggle a bit offensively in the target center. They're a bottom 5 point-producing team at home in the West. And in those home games, they've struggled shooting from the stripe. Minnesota's a bottom 5 free throw shooting team on their own court. And even though the Raptors aren't particularly known for their defense this year, they've had a few bright spots. They're in the top 10 in second quarter points allowed away from home. They're also covering in 64% of their out-of-conference road games. Now, injury-wise, Pirtle, Boucher, and Barnes are still out. Trent, Porter, Carton, and Agbaji are questionable. Meanwhile, for Minnesota on the other side, Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Clark, they're still inactive. Now, total-wise, the T-Wolves saw overs recently against the likes of Houston, Golden State, and the Clippers. And out of 14 out-of-conference road games for Toronto, they saw the over cash in all of them except for 2. Give me Toronto plus 16, over 215.5. All right, next play, Cavs, Suns, 10 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Phoenix is minus 6, totals 226. And I'll tell you, this is another one of those games where both teams are doing some good things on D. For Cleveland, they lead the NBA in defensive field goal percentage on the road. Meanwhile, for the Suns, they rarely get out-rebounded. They're a top 3 defensive rebounding team. Now, when it comes to the total, the Suns did see unders recently against the likes of the Nuggets, Spurs, and Sixers. They're also 11-3 to the under against the East at home. Meanwhile, Cleveland's gone 22-16 to the under in their travels this year. They also saw unders more recently against the likes of Minnesota and Indiana. Now, when it comes to selecting a winner in this one, this game is being featured as my extra daily pick, but as far as making a free play is concerned, give me the under 226. And with that, we're going to dive into some Major League Baseball action. We're going to start off with the Royals at the O's, 105 Eastern first pitch. Baltimore's minus $1.65, total 7. Corbin Burns for the O's, Cole Reagans for the Royals. And even though Reagans looked solid in his season debut, he unfortunately picked up the loss in that outing. And of course, a lot of that has to do with run support. Pasquantino's just 3 for 20 at the dish, yet to record an extra base hit. And even worse, Hunter Renfroe's still in search of his first hit of the season. He's 0 for 15 with a handful of strikeouts. And speaking of Ks, Corbin Burns mowed down 11 batters in his season debut over the weekend. He allowed just 1 hit through 6 innings of work. And in the O's 3 wins this season, their lineup averaged 10 runs a game in those victories. Ryan Mountcastle's hitting .333 with a couple of extra base hits. Anthony Santander has a pair of homers along with 8 RBI. Give me Baltimore minus 165, under 7. Next game, Angels Marlins, 1:10 p.m. East. Miami's $1.20, totals 8.5. AJ Puck for the Fish, Patty Sandoval for Los Angeles. And even though Patrick did not look great in his season debut, I think this is a pretty good spot to get back on track against these winless Marlins. Miami's 0-6 to start the year, and their pitching staff's allowed a bunch of runs in those losses. Starting pitcher A.J. Puck, he also gave up 4 earned runs in just 2 innings of work over the weekend, and he walked 6 batters during that short span. Tons of control issues. And we could see some more of the same here today because the Angels have been relatively patient at the dish at times. They've walked 14 times already, and they've gotten the W in their last 3 straight. Logan O'Hoppe, 6 for 12 with a couple of walks. Mike Trout and Taylor Ward, they have 5 homers combined. When it comes to the total, LA saw 3 of 5 get over the number this year. Meanwhile, due to Miami's pitching problems, they saw all of their contests get over the total this season except for one. Give me the Angels plus $1 over 8.5. Next matchup, Twins, Brewers, 1:10 p.m. East. Both teams are minus $1.10, pretty much a coin flip. Total's 8.5. Joe Ross for the Brewers, Chris Paddock for Minnesota. Now, Paddock is making his season debut after a couple of shaky seasons over the past couple of years. And I'll tell you, spring ball really was no different for Patty. He allowed a couple of homers and 18 hits through 4 starts in the preseason. And even if he does have a good showing here today, the Twins have looked pretty dicey at the plate. They're averaging only 2.7 runs a game through 4 contests. I know that's a short sample size, but they haven't looked good over the past week or so. Now, Carlos Santana's just 3 for 15 at the dish, and he's yet to score a run. Willie Castro's gone just 1 for 11. He's yet to record an RBI. And they're going up against Joe Ross here today, and he racked up a good bit of strikeouts in the spring. Ross fanned 17 batters in just a dozen innings. As a team, the Brewers are now 4-0 to start the year, and they've been getting a bunch of production out of the youngster Jackson Honeynut Chorio. He's 6 for 16 with a few RBI. And Christian Yelich, he has a pair of homers, and he scored 4 times already. Now, injury-wise, Royce Lewis still on the IL for Minnesota. When it comes to the total, 3 out of Minnesota's last 4 games did fall under the total. Meanwhile, the Brewers saw all of their games this year stay under the line except for one. Give me the Brewers minus $1.10, under 8.5. Next matchup, Rangers-Rays, 1:10 p.m. East. Tampa Bay is minus $1.20, totals 8 runs. Aaron Savali for Tampa Bay, Nathan Eovaldi for Texas. Now, Eovaldi allowed just 2 runs in 6 innings of work in his season debut. And for the exception of yesterday's game, the Rangers do continue to produce runs. They've scored 31 times through 5 games. They have a couple of guys who look like they're in midseason form. Adolis Garcia, he's hit 3 home runs already, and he's got 6 RBI. And Jared Walsh, he's 7 for 18 with 5 runs scored. Now, obviously, bad news for Rangers fans as Josh Young's gone down with a wrist injury, 10-day IL for him. Nate Lau also on the IL, although I think the Rangers have depth and should be able to power through that. And even though the Rangers, could have their hands full with Aaron Savali on the bump, this Tampa lineup has struck out 51 times in 6 games. Hanley Ramirez is just 3 for 21. He's yet to drive in a run. And for the exception of a pair of homers, Isaac Paredes has just 3 hits on the year. Now, injury-wise, Lau, Walls, Aranda, and DeLuca are still out for Tampa. Josh Young, once again, inactive for Texas. Give me the Rangers plus $1, under 8. Next game, Braves, White Sox, 2:10 Eastern start time. Atlanta's 350, totals 8. Spencer Strider for Atlanta. Nick Nastrini possibly making his season debut here today for Chicago. And even though the White Sox got the shocking win yesterday over Atlanta, I'm not sure they're good enough at the plate to do it twice. I don't think they can do it 2 days in a row. They're still averaging under 2.3 runs a game this year, and they've got a handful of guys who just are not getting it done at the dish. Andrew Benintendi's just 3 for 20. He's yet to bat a runner in. And Andrew Vaughn's just 3 for 16, and he's yet to touch home plate. And unfortunately for them, they got to face Spencer Strider, who's got 1 million strikeouts over the past couple of seasons, both in the regular season and postseason. Spring ball's no exception. All he does is strike people out and throw gas. And of course, he's backed by a powerful lineup of sluggers. Jared Kelenick's hitting .545 with an OPS in the 1200s. And of course, Ozzie Albies, he's batting .350 with a team-best 7 RBI. Now, injury-wise, Sean Murphy's still on the IL for Atlanta with that oblique injury. They do have a couple good catchers behind them, so I think they'll be okay. Now, total-wise, I don't think we'll see many runs out of the White Sox. They're 4-1 to the under for the season. And Atlanta saw their last two in this very series with Chicago stay under the line. Give me the Braves -1.5, under 8 in the tight window. Next game, Bo Sox, Athletics, 337 East. Boston's -165, totals 8. Nick Pivetta for Boston, Ross Stripling for Oakland. Now, Stripling threw 5 lackluster innings in his season debut. He allowed 5 runs on 7 hits through just a handful of innings. And needless to say, he did take the loss in that start. And he's officially got an ERA in the 7s. And even though he does throw well, I can't imagine Oakland's going to outscore these guys. The A's are averaging under 2.6 runs a game. And they're also facing a Boston team who's got plenty of bats. They're currently on a 3-game winning streak. And they're led by Tyler O'Neill, who's hitting .333 with an OPS in the 1100s. Now, Jarren Duran, he's also gone 7 for 24, and he has 6 stolen bases on the year. Pitching-wise, don't let that 0-1 record fool you. Nick Pivetta's pitched, he pitched solid in his season debut. He allowed just 1 run in that game, which was a solo home run. He actually struck out double-digit batters in 6 innings of work. I think we should see more of the same here today. Boston did see 3 out of their last 6 get over the posted total. Oakland's 5-1 to the over themselves. Give me Boston -165, over 8. Next game, Yankees D-backs, 3:40 p.m. East. New York's -120, totals 8.5. Carlos Rodon for New York, Merrill Kelly for Arizona. And Kelly looked dominant in his last start. He threw 6 2/3, and he allowed just 1 earned run. Kelly's officially 1-0 on the year with an ERA of 1.35. And the D-backs do hit the ball well at times. Lourdes Gurriel, he has double-digit RBI already, OPS in the thousands. Christian Walker, he's tied with Gurriel for the club lead in homers with 3 apiece. And they're facing a Yankee lineup who's throttled down a bit offensively. The Bombers have averaged under 3.6 runs a game in their last 4 outings. There's a couple of big money guys who just haven't been any type of threat at the dish yet. Aaron Judge has gone just 3 for 24 with 7 strikeouts. And Giancarlo Stanton, he's just 3 for 20 with only 1 RBI. Now, injury-wise, LeMahieu's still out with a foot injury. Grichuk still inactive for Arizona on the other side. When it comes to the total, Arizona's last 3 straight all fell under the number. Meanwhile, the Yankees saw all of their contests this season fall under the total themselves. Give me Arizona plus $1, under 8.5. Next game, Reds-Phillies, 4:05 Eastern first pitch. That game got moved back due to rain. Philadelphia's -180, total 7.5. Zach Wheeler for Philadelphia, Frankie Montas for Cincinnati. And I'll tell you what, Montas threw 6 scoreless innings in his season debut. And as a team, the Reds got the W in 3 out of their last 5. And they are doing a nice job at the dish this year. Since he's averaging 6 runs a game, they've got a couple of guys who are always on base. Spencer Steer's 9 for 19 with 14 total bases and 5 runs scored. And Jake Fraley's gone 6 for 12 with a couple of runs scored as well. And I'll tell you, even though you know what you're getting with Zach Wheeler, the Phils could be in trouble if the Reds can get to their bullpen. This Phillies pitching staff is allowing 7 runs a game this year, so I'm not particularly saying that Wheeler's going to be responsible for all those runs today, but if they can run the pitch count, get him out of the game, 6th, 7th inning, that bullpen could potentially be in trouble. Now, injury-wise, Friedel and McClain are still out for Cincy. Got to imagine once those guys are back, the Reds will only be better at the dish. They can only help. Total-wise, both teams have seen every one of their games this season get over the total. They actually scored a bunch of runs in the slop just last night as well. Give me Cincinnati plus 1.5, over 7.5 runs. Next game, Guardians-Mariners, 4:10 Eastern first pitch. Seattle's -155, total 7.5. George Kirby for Seattle, Logan Allen for Cleveland. And Allen did get the W in his season debut despite running into some trouble. But I'll tell you what, this Guardian lineup, they ain't no slouch this season, at least as of right now. The Guardians are scoring over 6.3 runs a game. They've got a handful of guys who are just producing at the dish. Josh Naylor's hitting .368 with an OPS in the thousands. And Stephen Kwan, he's batting .310 with a handful of runs scored. And even though starting pitcher George Kirby's looked good in his opener for Seattle, the Mariners are having problems at the plate. They've scored only 17 runs in 6 games. Guys like J.P. Crawford, he's gone just 2 for 24. And Jorge Polanco, he's just 3 for 22, and he's yet to drive a runner in. Seattle's gone 4-2 to the under for the entire season. 2 out of Cleveland's last 3 stayed under the total themselves. Give me the Guardians plus 1.5, under 7.5. Next game, Cardinals, Padres, 4:10 Eastern first pitch. San Diego's minus $1.50, totals 8.5. Joe Musgrove for the Padres, Zach Thompson for St. Louis. And even though Thompson had a rough outing last time, the Cards continue to produce runs at the plate. They scored 21 times in their last 4 contests, and Brendan Donovan's leading the lineup in hits. Now, also another name you want to maybe think about here, Mason Wynn. He's gone 5 for 16 with a couple of runs scored. They're taking on a Padres team who lost 4 out of their last 5. And they've had problems at the plate against St. Louis in this series. Out of 2 games against the Cards, the Pods have mustered up only 4 total runs. They're leaving a ton of runners on base. Now, Joe Musgrove, he also looks sloppy in a couple of starts this year. He currently has an ERA of 9.72 after a couple of outings. The Pods are currently 5-2 to the over in their last 7. St. Louis went 4-2 to the over in their last 6. Give me the Cardinals plus 1.5, over 8.5 runs. Next game, Buccos, Nats, 6:45 East. Pittsburgh's $1.55, totals 9. Mitch Keller for the Pirates, Trevor Williams for Washington. Now, Williams makes his season debut after going just 6-10 last season with an ERA in the mid-5s. And I'll tell you what, spring training wasn't all too encouraging for the veteran. He allowed 3 home runs and a dozen earned runs in just 15 innings. And out of 4 games this year, these Nats pitchers as a whole, they've allowed 28 total runs. And we could see some more of the same here today because these Pittsburgh sluggers, they've looked aggressive to start the season. Michael A. Taylor's hitting .471 with an OPS in the thousands. And Brian Reynolds, he's hitting .333 with 8 RBI. Now, both teams saw all of their games thus far get over the posted total. Give me the Pirates minus 155, over 9. Next game, Tigers, Mets, 7:10 Flushing, Queens. New York's minus $1.30, total 7. Adrian Hauser for the Mets, Casey Mize for Detroit. Now, Mize makes his season debut here today after not pitching since 2022. And I'll tell you, he looked pretty good in spring ball. Mize struck out 20 batters in 20-plus innings, and he did have an ERA in the low 2s. Now, Mize also kept the ball down, allowing just 1 home run in the spring. And this Detroit pitching staff, they've looked pretty good to start the year. They're allowing under 2.1 runs a game thus far. And, by the way, the Tigers are currently undefeated through 4 games. They're facing a Mets team who lost all of their contests thus far, and they continue to struggle at the dish. They've accumulated only 8 total runs through 4 contests. And guys like Lindor and Nimmo, they're just getting shit on by the media, and rightfully so. Both players just 1 for 16 respectively, 2 for 32 collectively, and both of them, they've yet to score a run. They both have not touched home plate yet. And don't think I forgot about Jeff McNeil either. He's just 1 for 12, and he's yet to reach second base. Just 1 total base this year. Now, if you think Adrian Hauser, the starting pitcher, if you think he can keep him in it, just a reminder, he's had an ERA of 4 or higher in 3 out of his last 4 seasons with Milwaukee. And as far as spring ball is concerned, well, we kind of saw more of the same of that. He pitched 12 innings and finished with an ERA of 5.25. Now, total-wise, both teams are 3-1 to the under to start the year respectively. Give me the Tigers plus $1.10, under 7. Next game, Rockies, Cubs, 7:40 Eastern first pitch. Chicago's the $2 favorite, total 7. Luke Little for Chicago, Cal Quantrill for Colorado. Now, Cal had a bad spring training and a bad season debut. He allowed 5 runs on 9 hits in his last start, and he currently has an ERA in the 9s. Now, as a team, the Rockies are just 1-5, and they allowed 49 total runs in those ball games. This pitching staff has been a problem over the past couple of seasons. And I'll tell you what, they're facing a Cubbies team here today who's pounded the baseball over the past 3 games. Ian Happ's hitting .421 with an OPS just about in the thousands. And Chris Morel's got a couple of homers and a handful of ribbies. Morel also an OPS of 1171. And starting pitcher, the 23-year-old Luke Little, well, there ain't nothing little about him. He ain't so little. He's 6'8", 220, and he looked pretty good in limited work in the spring. Now, injury-wise, Patrick Wisdom's still on the bench with back problems. When it comes to the total, 3 out of Chicago's last 5 did get over the total. Colorado, they went 4-2 to the over in their last 6. Give me the Cubs, -1.5, over 7. Next game, Blue Jays, Astros, 8:10 Eastern start time. Houston's $1.45, totals 8.5. Christian Javier for the Stros, Chris Bassett for Toronto. And even though the Astros have looked sluggish, I think Bassett could run into some problems here today. He had a lackluster spring training and a lackluster season debut. Bassett allowed 5 runs through 5 innings of work. He currently has an official ERA in the 7s. And this Toronto lineup, it's feast or famine. These guys have been held to just 2 runs or less in 4 out of their last 5 ball games. And they're going to have to face Christian Javier here today, who threw 6 innings of scoreless ball in his last start. The righty currently has a whip of just .83. Give me Houston, -145, under 8.5. With that, folks, we're going to dive into our next and final breakdown for the video. Going to be in that Giants-Dodgers game. That'll be a 10:10 Eastern first pitch. The Dodgers are -225, totals 8.5. Tyler Glasnow for the Dodgers, Kyle Harrison for San Francisco. And regardless of how Harrison pitches, the Giants lost their last 3 straight, and they just haven't been good enough at the dish. And they're facing a Dodgers club who won 5 out of their last 6 themselves, and they look pretty unstoppable at the plate. I'm starting to think that Atlanta had the best lineup. I don't know, man. This LA lineup is unbelievable. They scored 5 runs or more in all of their games this year. Mookie Betts is a staggering 15 for 30 with 5 home runs and double-digit RBI. Betts currently has an OPS in the 1700s. And Freddie Freeman's hitting .412 with an OPS in the 1100s himself. And even though starting pitcher Tyler Glasnow comes into today's game with a stingy ERA in the low 2s, I don't think it really matters how he pitches. The Dodgers, they can outscore anyone. Give me the Dodgers, -1.5, over 8.5 runs. And with that, folks, we're going to jump into our quick pick recap starting in the NBA. Give me the Lakers, -13, over 233.5. Blazers, +1.5, under 213. I'm 11-2 in my last 13 NBA tier package picks on my premium site. Atlanta, -11.5, over 223. Brooklyn Nets, +7.5, over 230. Boston Celtics, -9, under 231. Memphis Grizzlies, +13.5, over 221. I like the under 208 in the Magic Pelicans game. Raptors, +16, over 215.5. And give me the under 226 in the Cavaliers-Suns game. And with that, we're going to dive into some Major League Baseball. Give me the Orioles, -165, under 7. Angels, +$1, over 8.5. Brewers, -$1.10, under 8.5 runs. Rangers, +$1, under 8. Atlanta Braves, -1.5, under 8 runs. Boston, -165, over 8. Arizona, +$1, under 8.5. Cincinnati Reds, +1.5, over 7.5. Cleveland, +1.5, under 7.5 runs. Cardinals, +1.5, over 8.5. Pirates, -$1.55, over 9. Detroit, +$1.10, under 7. Cubbies minus 1.5 over 7. Astros minus 145 under 8.5. Give me the Dodgers minus 1.5 over 8.5 runs. And with that, folks, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on my premium site. Now, if you guys do end up getting a membership here today on patreon.com/BrockPage, just a friendly reminder, you're going to get access to that membership every single day for the next 30 days. As an added bonus, you're also going to get access to all of my cheaper memberships absolutely free. They're going to be included with your purchase. That's why I always tell folks that Chairman membership, it's a full access, all-inclusive package. Gives you access to every single premium selection of mine, every single package, every single day for the next 30 days. As an added bonus, you also get access to my Chairman podcast absolutely free. It's included with your purchase. But most importantly, folks, got to thank you for joining me right here on the free video. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. With that said, folks, happy Wednesday to you. Happy hump day to you. I look forward to seeing you later on today on my premium site at patreon.com/BrockPage.